Akeem Olufemi Gbajabiamila. God bless you all.
This is House Ticket and you're welcome. With the annual recess still ongoing, we shall continue with our review of legislations in the 9th House. Last week we focused on reform of obsolete laws of the lands in various sectors of the economy, starting with security and healthcare. For this week, we shall review legislations of the House seeking to reform the economy and power sector, as well as the review of obsolete laws and rules in the nation's constitution. Let's begin the program after this timeout. Please stay tuned.
We set our minds right, embrace each other in love and brotherhood. We will come through these troubling times. We will survive, we will recover, and then we will thrive. One nation under God, free, peaceful, and prosperous.
The 9th House of Representatives since inception in 2019 has made reforming the economy through review of obsolete laws a priority. The objective is to bring our laws up to date and engender sectoral developments. In this first part of our program, we shall focus on some of these laws seeking to reform the finance and power sector. The report is compiled and presented from our studio.
The economic reform started with the budget cycle of the nation. The lawmakers saw the need to revert to the nation's budget cycle to a January to December frame. The feat was eventually achieved with the cooperation of the executive, and since 2019, the nation's budget cycle has reverted to a 12 calendar month from January. Accompanying the budget reform was the financial bill aimed at addressing various fiscal and economic challenges of the nation.
The finance bill which we have gathered here to consider and to contribute to will determine, among other things, our ability as a nation to meet the obligations of government and implement policies to build infrastructure, address the problem of insecurity, grow the economy, and provide jobs that pay a living wage and lift families out of poverty.
The purpose of these amendments are to rehabilitate the national economy, promote fiscal equity, by mitigating instances of regressive taxation, reform domestic tax laws to align with global best practices.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning said the finance bill addresses issues which seek to deepen innovation, majorly in taxation and tax administration.
We need to respond fiscal incentives to help us to reduce proliferation of fiscal incentives by carefully assessing the costs versus the benefit of these incentives. We also needed to prioritize job creation to enhance growth and investment, and also to reduce taxes where possible.
Still on ensuring a tighter fiscal regime for the country, the 9th House has institutionalized agency interactions over the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper in a bid to understand and discuss revenue projections, hold accountability in remittances, amongst other fiscal matters surrounding the nation's budgetary expenditure, borrowings, and general economic health. In another stride, when the novel coronavirus broke in 2020, the economic stimulus bill, sponsored by the Speaker himself, was also considered and various aspects of the recommendations of the bills adopted. Other critical economic sector reforms that the House was able to legislate on include those in aviation industry, where the following executive bills are under consideration in the House. A bill for an act to repeal the Nigerian College of Aviation Technology Act 2010 and to enact the Nigerian College of Aviation Technology Bill to provide for its organization, control and operation, and for related matters. And a bill for an act to repeal the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency Act of 2010 and to enact the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency Act for the purpose of providing effective air navigation services in Nigeria ensuring safety and regularity of air navigation services and for related matters, and a bill for an act to repeal the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria Act 2010 and to enact the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria Act to provide for the effective management of airports in Nigeria and for related matters, amongst other such bills.
It is imperative to know that the development of our aviation industry is an added advantage to the growth of our economies. It is in this vein that the House of Representatives will continue to support total rehabilitation and upgrading of our airports and allied services.
That the acts, as they are, of some of the agencies, service providers, have now become regulatory in nature. A committee involving relevant stakeholders was constituted by me to review the Establishment Act of 6 aviation agencies, not only to close the audit findings by removing regulatory powers from service provider agencies, but to also, 1, bring the respective acts up to date with development in international civil aviation.
In another major review in revamping the economic sector of the country, focus was made on the country's main source of income, being the petroleum industry.
This PIB will not suffer the same fate it has been suffering for the past 20 years.
The review of obsolete laws in the industry gave birth to the Petroleum Industry Act, which became law in August 2021. This is a major achievement for both the 9th National Assembly and the executive arm of government. Other aspects of the economy, the lawmakers have re-echoed the need to revamp industrialization through the power sector. A review of the obsolete laws in the industry began by the 9th House, where the state of electricity supply is worrisome. One major legislation that has come up in the 9th House for review in the power sector is on the estimated billing prohibition bill, to which the House constituted a special committee to meet with stakeholders and bring to an end the perennial problems of the sector. The ad hoc committee was inaugurated Tuesday, the 9th of June 2020. The Speaker of the House of Representatives lamented the long struggle of Nigeria's attempt at fixing the power sector, which has been ongoing for decades now. He, however, added that in trying to fix the power sector, estimated billing remains a no for lawmakers, just as he called on all stakeholders to put heads together to get the reforms in the power sector right for national economic growth.
Some of you may recall that the House, in our legislative agenda, proposed to initiate a comprehensive review of all legislation relating to the power sector. It now falls to this committee. We have come to inaugurate today to take the first steps towards ensuring that we fulfill this commitment. It will not be an easy task. Nation building rarely is. But it will be a worthwhile effort when at the end of it, we can initiate and complete the necessary legislative reforms to remove the regulatory and bureaucratic bottlenecks that continue to mitigate against optimum performance in this sector.
The Speaker then urged the ad hoc committee to undertake a holistic review of the power sector in Nigeria and recommend legislative action to the larger House. The committee had promised considering the interest of Nigerians and Nigeria, whom they represent, in the investigations.
The emphasis shall border substantially on the distribution side of the electricity supply chain and on measures to ensure adequate metering as a way to drastically reduce aggregate technical and commercial losses. We will consider paramount in addressing much of the problems that have occasioned the huge gap between available generation capacity and actual electricity transmitted and distributed for consumptions of Nigerians.
The ad hoc committee set to work, taking on the issues hindering development in the sector. With collaboration of the executive and other key players, the committee's investigation is for lawmakers to gather information to guide it in designing the required and appropriate legislative intervention in the power sector.
While you kept on saying, and you repeatedly said in your presentation, that the privatization process was successful. Up till now, despite the significant privatization of the sector, we have a lot of taxpayers' money being injected and pumped into the industry. For what? This is an asset sold. Industry, more than 60-70% sold out to private hands. then what do you think you have to tell Nigerians and this committee, and under moral obligation, under moral commitment, that what justifies the continuous injection of Nigeria's taxpayers' money into the power sector industry? And even with that, we still have problems.
There was a reiteration of the fact that there is the need to address all regulatory and bureaucratic bottlenecks which continue to work against optimal performance in the sector.
In 2015, there was a presidential initiative to supply migrants to Nigeria. And a total of 192 million facility was arranged for this purpose. Where are we with that program now?
The Federal Executive Council has approved for Yola Electricity Distribution Company the procurement of 200,217 meters under the Meter Asset Provider Scheme from Mrs. Ziegler's Network Limited, and also relating to the compromise judgment agreement stated for the implementation. Kaduna Disco 2 has also entered into an agreement with the Mrs. Ziegler's to provide meters. All other discos are encouraged to avail themselves with this opportunity for this funds that is available for the metering program. This is where we are now.
During the various interactions with the stakeholders, some of the biggest challenges identified include the everyday rise in the liabilities of the power industry, the lack of unbundling of the transmission companies, TCN, as it concerns separation of the independent system operators from the transmission service providers, absence of audit and financial statements since the establishment of NEPA and PHCN before the reform of the sector, as well as inefficiency in terms of utilization of revenues on the part of the distribution companies' discos.
The federal government has provided guarantees through the World Bank, and we are obligated to pay whether we take or we don't take. And that has been a major problem, Mr. Chairman. It's one of the biggest problems we face in the Ministry of Finance. Every month we have to find money to pay the invoices, and we're taking billions.
Generating companies who have been part of the stakeholders' discussions also submitted that what it generates is in a stranded capacity and not paid for, and that GENCOs and distribution companies' discos should be allowed to trade between themselves without intermediaries.
We had a contract to generate, and we have generated ramp-up capacity from 3,000 when we took over to now 8,000 plus. And you're still strangulating me with a vesting contract that is taking just between 3,500 and 3,008 as the BPDG presented in the morning. So what the GENCOs want is, we don't really want government intervention. Allow our product to sell. Our product can take care of itself. Nigerians need electricity.
In adjourning the investigations on the 22nd of July 2020, the ad hoc committee had emphasized on the need for impact assessment of projects executed through federal government interventions, especially when it has to do with loans taken to finance the projects post-privatization.
We have seen cases of other nations who have successfully privatized. It yielded results, using perhaps much limited amount of resources than the one we are injecting in the system. So I don't see any reason why we will operate a system that worked elsewhere with even more amount of resources injected into the system, but yet we don't enjoy positive results that other nations are enjoying.
Lawmakers called for improved cooperation from government agencies to move the nation forward. Meanwhile, the submissions made by other stakeholders are to be studied critically by the committee towards summing up its report from the investigations undertaken.
Welcome back. If you have been following us, we are reviewing reform of critical sectors through legislations introduced by the 9th House to aid development of the various sectors. So far, we have looked at finance and the power sector. We'll take one more sector reform as we round up the program. This time around, the Constitution Review, where a special committee was constituted in October 2020, comprising about 65 members, a member from each state of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, plus other key lawmakers and heads of key committees of the House that are expected to add more value to the amendment process. All the women legislators in the House are also included in the committee membership. It is chaired by the Deputy Speaker of the House, Ahmed Idris Wase. The committee, since its inauguration over several meetings and discussions, arrived at 4 priority points as its focus during the amendment process. The areas are local government reform, electoral reform, judicial reform, women's rights and political participation. However, with the committee's call for memoranda from stakeholders and the general public, it received submissions on the following thematic areas: local government autonomy, devolution of powers, police and security architecture, indigene and citizenship rights, electoral reforms, judicial reforms, socio-economic and cultural rights, gender equity, women's political representation, amongst others. Armed with these areas of focus, the public hearing was conducted. The hearings took place in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, with each zone of the country having 2 centers. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, speaking during the hearing, had pointed out that no nation has a perfect constitution, but that Nigeria needs to make substantive amendments to the existing constitution that will considerably change the character of the nation for good. The Speaker had therefore appealed to Nigerians to see in the ongoing amendments to the Constitution by the 9th National Assembly as an honest resolve by the lawmakers and review process that offers opportunity to try to achieve the best version of Nigeria. During the stakeholders' consultations nationwide, issues canvassed for included state police, There were also other items as well, such as reflection of a true federalism in the Constitution, re-inclusion of magistrates in the Constitution, and review of the retirement age from 60 to 65. Declaration to make the Higher National Diploma HND equivalent to university degree. Need to ensure gender equality and a review of the revenue allocation.
Recommendation is that the concurrent list should even be abolished. Let us know what the federal can legislate upon. Let us know what states can legislate upon. And federal government should not have power to also legislate on things that the state government has power to legislate upon.
The other issue which your distinguished committee should look at is the creation of local governments. This is another issue which we feel that the states should have absolute power to create local governments in their states.
Some other parts of the country called for the following: guiding philosophy as a people of Nigeria, rule of law to prevail, local government autonomy, electoral reforms to guarantee free, fair and credible elections, local government creation, amongst others.
We appreciate the large turnout. It is one of the constitutional requirements in terms of deciding our functions to align with the provisions as contained in the amended sections that we are to conduct properly here, and this is just what we are here for. I do not have a very long speech, but to assure Nigerians that we are going to do justice to all presentations. We are there for you. You gave us a mandate, and we are not going to take it for granted in terms of what you have entrusted upon us. We will assure you through this medium that the National Assembly will do justice to every paper presented before us. And by the grace of God, we shall uphold the popular opinion of Nigerians.
It will not be correct to assume that all the current challenges of the nation are tied to the Constitution. While we can point out some of them to the current Constitution, we must realize that our determination to follow its provision and respect it as a grand norm that binds us together is very key to solving our national problems. While we should have an open mind to every submission, we should not succumb to pressures, blackmail, intimidation or harassment, which may be engineered by internal or external forces that stand to gain from the destabilization of our nation.
The review of obsolete laws and rules in the nation's constitution is still ongoing after collation of opinions from the Nigerian populace. The ad hoc committee is to conclude its work and submit to the House in due time. That was our review of some of the laws introduced by the Ninth House to foster sectoral reforms in the economy, constitutional review and the power sector. Laws are the basis of which the nation is run, and there's no better way to oil the wheels of change than by giving Nigerians the right set of laws. Thanks for watching, and remember that you can catch up on House Ticket on our YouTube channel, New Age TV Network. See you next time.